Okay, so our next panel is assistant to editing, making the jump. Now, how many here are assistant editors? Show of hands. Okay, we have quite a lot of them, and quite often we get the question, how do you make this jump? Hence this panel. There are many paths for a career, and this is absolutely one of them that is incredibly valid. So I'd like to introduce our moderator is Robbie Gibbon. Come and sit down. Please have a round of applause. And our panel today is Eve Doherty, Adam Goff, Charlene Short, John Benson, ACE, and Stephen Worsley. All right, Robbie, thank you very much, everyone.
Cool. Well, thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming back. It was nice to see you all back in here again. Stephen completely stole my intro there, so we'll skip that. This panel is assistant to editor making the jump. As you said, there's many routes to becoming an editor. We have basically assembled a crack team of editors now, and the plan is to crack their heads open and see how they did it. So by the time we leave, we'll all be able to be editors. First of all, I'm going to introduce you to our panel. So we have, sitting next to me, we have Eve Doherty, who has credits assisting on shows such as Made in Dagenham, Morning Glory, Alan Partridge, Alpha Papa, Game of Thrones, and then has moved on to editing shows such as Hang Ups, and you're directing your own documentary.
Yep.
I Am Rebecca.
That's right.
Next up, we have Mr. Adam Goff. Hello. Adam Goff, sir, assisted on shows such as Children of Men, In Bruges, Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows, Parts 1 and 2, and X-Men First Class. And Charlene Short, down the line, assisted on shows from The Only Way is Essex, In the Flesh, The Tunnel, and then has made an editing break on Fortitudes, The Musketeers, Peaky Blinders, and is currently editing Dagenham?
Strangers.
Strangers, sorry, he's currently editing Strangers. Adam, I skipped your editing credits.
That's all right.
He's doing all right. He's edited shows such as Bees Make Honey, Hand of God, and just finished cutting Roma, which is pretty spectacular. Mr. John Benson, over in the corner. We have assisted on shows such as Natural Born Killers, Twister, Fight Club, and then went on to edit South Park, the movie.
Bigger, longer, and uncut.
Bigger, longer, and uncut. Shows Shark Tale, the Lego Batman movie, and and then Stephen Worsley, last but not least, on the end over there, assisted on shows such as Green Zone, Dread, Filth, Woman in Black 2, War and Peace, which you then got an editing break on, and then has continued to edit shows such as Snatch, Electric Dreams, and is currently doing Vanity Fair.
Finished Vanity Fair.
Finished Vanity Fair.
Origins.
He's just marveling. He's just rolling. So first of all, basically what I would like to do is no one just suddenly appears and is an editor. Everyone has their way that they got initially into a cutting room. You guys all assisted. So what I'd really like to do is basically just, if you can pinpoint a moment, it might not necessarily be your first job, but it will be a significant moment that you had that got you a break in the cutting room. Or maybe you were in the cutting room, but got you onto a show or into an area that you wanted to be. So Eve, if you don't mind me starting with you.
I'll start. First of all, I feel like a bit of an imposter because I am so new to this. So I was assisting for 10 years. I always wanted to the edit seat. I'm so new to. I always wanted to edit, and then was assisting for so long, and then kind of got assistant fatigue, and took some time out, and then got a phone call just to see if I was available to help out with the pilot. And I wasn't doing anything at the time, so I took it, and that kind of transitioned into getting the episode of the show and then getting my love for the edit back. So I was like, right, okay, I can do this now. And I still assist. I'm still in that transition phase. But yeah, I think I'm trying to take just the edit jobs now and just concentrate on those.
And go, I'm
and
not an assistant
I'm not
anymore.
an
and
assistant. Please don't think of me that anymore. Yeah.
Do you mind if I pinpoint, like, what was your first show? What kind of got you into the editing room?
For
the
actual
assisting?
edit.
Yeah.
So it was actually Hang-Ups, which we're going to show a clip of. It was the pilot for that.
Okay.
So it was, on a shoestring and a very new production company, and they had an idea that was it was a show in the States already, a show called Web Therapy with Lisa Kudrow, and she got in touch with Stephen Mangan and said, I've got this idea for the show, you could do a UK version. And then they went with it and they kind of changed the idea. And it was all kind of, one of those ones where they shoot and then they go, what is this? In the edit. And then it's very much like an edit build of the show. So, I did the pilot really quickly and turned around in a month, and Channel 4 commissioned it the following summer. So, and then it was a series suddenly. And so that's how it was really quick.
So you're
and it was
basically
just a
set now.
chance. Yeah. Well, no, I don't know. It's not on TV yet, so we'll see how it goes. But
Nice. Adam, sir, so like, what got you into a cutting room? Was the first time you walked in and went, oh, what's that? That's an Avid.
Well, I was always wanting to kind of edit from early on at university, so making short films. It was the part of the process that I enjoyed. So straight out of university, I was very fortunate to get some work experience in a cutting room at Pinewood. So I was there for 2 weeks, and when I finished there, a film moved in upstairs and they needed a trainee. Yep. Came down, asked for a recommendation. They gave me my name, and they gave them my name. And that's kind of how it started, and I've been running with it since.
So you just kept lurking around, basically.
Yes, I need to actually think about how I did it, because it's been a very kind of fortunate number of steps that I've taken. So I've not really had a big game plan of desiring to be somewhere, but somehow through the way, or the people that I've worked with and been very fortunate at the shows, kind of ended up going in that direction. So I worked my way up through the cutting room as a trainee, as a second assistant to a first assistant. And then I got onto a documentary just to kind of get it in order as an assistant, like stroke assembly editor. I started doing the assembly work on it, and then one day the director came in, he just wanted to see some of the footage, saw just 20 minutes of the assembly and went, that's it. That's my fucking movie. That's it. No, that's great. Keep going. And I became an editor. So I didn't start the documentary with that in mind. It was purely Chris Levinson was the editor on it that brought me on to assemble it, and that's kind of how it played out. And I've been running with it ever since. So, yeah.
Doing okay.
It's doing all right.
Doing all right. Yeah. I feel bad because like everyone here is like massively successful, and I'm going, no, guys, go back to when you were struggling, and let's reminisce on all those moments. Charlene, your go.
So, yeah, I was working at university. I did photography, and I really kind of liked working with sound. Which I didn't really get with the still images, so I started playing around with moving images and sound and storytelling, and my tutor said try editing, and I was, yeah, great, okay. So I got work experience on a TV drama. I did a week whilst I was still at uni. And
is that just writing to production company, or
it was through a contact, actually. My sister's boyfriend's brother was a cameraman. So I got some other work experience as well in like sound post house, and just from writing to them and saying like, could I just come in and sit for a day or week or whatever you've got, basically, and just sort of shadow and chat to people, just because I was like trying to get a feel for where I wanted to be. And the week that I did the work experience was the end of the 9th series of that show, and then the 10th series they needed an assistant, and I'd made good contacts there and got on with everyone, so they said, do you want to come in and do a sort of trial, and then that turned into doing the 10th series of that job. So
Wow.
I actually think, for me, it was easier to get into the industry than it is to move up.
Yep. Which we will get to.
Yeah.
Cool, great. So, John, sir?
I have terrible news, and I also have brilliant news. So, being that we're in England, I'll start with the terrible news first. There's no one way to become an assistant, and there's no one way to become an editor. The brilliant news is there's no one way to become an assistant and no one way to become an editor. The one common thread for me in how I became an assistant and moved up to being an editor is that I said, yes, I can do the thing you're asking me. I was in film school at the University of Colorado at Boulder, and a low-budget film, the aptly titled The Forgotten One, was being made. And they called up to the university and said, who loves editing? Because we have an editing intern position that we'd like to fill. And I was put forward because I was editing all of my friends' films. I had 0 designs on being a director, so I was the candidate. So the day I showed up for my first, because I expected I'll learn from an assistant, and then I'll become an assistant, and then I'll learn from the editor and move up. So that I show up to the cutting room to find that the entire assistant editing team had walked off the show because the producers were so terrible. And they said, congratulations, we're promoting you to first assistant editor from editing intern. Is this a job you think you can do? And I said, yeah, oh yeah. So I went out and bought Norm Holland, ACE's book, The Editing Room Handbook. And every day I would read the chapter thinking, okay, this is what I need to do tomorrow. And I muddled my way through it. And in terms of when it came time, I worked as an assistant for 10 years after that. And it was when I was assisting on Fight Club, and I got a call from a friend of mine that said, hey, do you want to come cut this animated movie? And I thought to myself, I don't know anything about editing animation, but I thought, yes, I can do that. And turned out to be the South Park movie. So
Just that little movie.
just that little movie. So 1999, I had 2 credits, Fight Club and South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. And the rest of my career has just been downhill since then. But
Yeah.
As easy as that, Stephen?
I kind of have I thought it was a very unique way into the industry, and then realised Robbie has exactly the same way.
Basically just following you.
Yeah, pretty much. So I did media production at university, which kind of encompasses doing everything, sound, lighting, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I remember in a studio lighting exam, the first rule is always raise the lights higher than head height. And a lecturer walked in to Marcus and immediately smacked his head off a light. And I thought, I'm probably not going to do lighting. And I realised I really enjoy, like kind of most people here, sitting in a room on my own, looking at a computer screen for 12, 18 hours a day. And through that, I've worked on quite a few short films. And then a friend of mine told me about ACE were running an internship over in LA. So he said they've opened it up internationally this year. I think you should apply for it. So I applied for it and then ended up a couple of months later sitting in a cutting room in LA on a 6-week internship. And literally from that, I came back over here. I was cutting financial news interviews and was almost ready to pack everything in because there's nothing more boring in life than listening to people talk about how much money they spend of other people's money. And then Jenny from ACE got in touch with me and said, Chris Rouse is doing Green Zone and they're coming back over to the UK. They need a trainee. Do I want to go for it? So I said, yeah, I'd love to. Next thing I know, sitting in a cutting room in Soho, working on Green Zone as a trainee. And then kind of from there, similar thing, worked my way up from trainee, second assistant, first assistant, and then through into cutting.
So basically, there's no way to do it. No. There's no single way, like, you can just, it's
hard work,
persistence, and
Yeah.
basically
People taking a chance on you.
taking a shot, making yourself available and being
Yeah.
essentially someone people want to be around.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah. I think.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, ultimately, I've always felt for assisting, and like my theory with becoming an editor, there is a certain element of it being an apprenticeship. So with what you're working on as an assistant, it's just as important to kind of think about those projects for where you want to be, because the editors that I worked for as an assistant were incredible, and I'd learned so much that when the opportunity came, then you have the moment to flourish and run with it. So it's not just getting that moment of just becoming an editor, it's just you're developing into it as a bud just to kind of take that moment and run and just get away with it, really. Just being ready.
Yeah. When it comes, you're ready to jump and be the right person for that moment.
I spoke to somebody I've spoken to a lot of people about making the jump, but I spoke to someone and they said something really interesting, that you have to actually tell people that you want to edit, because you know, people aren't going to assume it, so you know, you kind of have to talk about it and make it clear that that's the route that you want to take, because they're more likely to then give you editing chances, and you know, you can sort of build that relationship with people as well. So
Have the confidence to be ready to push yourself when that moment comes about. Shall we move on to some clips? Eve, we're going to show your clip first.
Great.
So we're going to show you've brought hang-ups, which you've already mentioned.
Yep.
Do you mind just setting up?
Yeah, sure. We also have a Neil Griffin in the audience, who's our assistant, and he hasn't seen this yet. So this isn't on TV yet. This will be airing. Well, we're not allowed to tell anyone, but after the football.
Don't tell anyone you've seen this.
Basically, this is the UK version of Web Therapy, which is Lisa Kudrow's comedy. The idea is that it's completely ad-libbed. They have there's a web therapist who is trying to trying to give advice on people's issues, but he's not dealing with his own. He's in a lot of debt. The scene you're about to watch is from episode 3. So I just cut one episode of the 6 episodes for the series. It's from episode 3, sorry, and it's the third time that this caller calls, and he's played by Steve Oram, and his character is Neil, and he's a debt collector, and Stephen Mangan's character is Richard Pitt, is a therapist, and he's convinced his debt collector to take therapy as a sort of quid pro quo way of dealing with his debt. So he's calling him to try and give him therapy, but this guy's head is so weird that he's like can't deal with the stuff that he's telling him. So that's the setup, because if you don't know that, then it will make no sense. But yeah,
Cool.
So I'll tell you about that afterwards.
Can we roll the clip, please? So the clips in this panel are going to have a different tone to the previous panel. So was this your first editing opportunity then on this show?
Yes, yeah. I just got one episode of the
Yep.
show, so I cut the pilot.
Yep.
Steve Oram was in the pilot as well, and then
How did even the pilot come about? How did you go from how did someone go, yeah, she's got this?
what to get the actual edit gig?
Yeah.
So I think I might have misanswered your first question, but I was assisting, and then I was a post-production coordinator from previous jobs, Robin Davies. I'm sure loads of you know him, but he had got his first. He'd moved up. He's the same age as me. We'd come up through the industry. He'd been a trainee, then got his. He'd gone into post-production coordinating, sort of set for the supervisor role, but he wanted to produce. And then, so this is made by Slam, which is Stephen Mangan's production company, and they just started, and I think there was a connection that Robin got in as a producer, and he's kind of proved his salt, and he's now one of their main producers. It's a tiny company, and then we went to a lunch together with the post-production supervisor for Robin's birthday, and I was just sitting there talking about how I hated assisting. Sorry, guys, it's great. And I wanted to edit, but I'd taken a lot of time out because basically after Game of Thrones season 6, I was absolutely knackered, and I had a nervous twitch, and I was just like, I don't think I could do this anymore.
I don't want any more people to die.
Yeah, I just like violence. No, I took a bit of time out to actually have a think about what to do, because I think, they're different jobs. Assisting is a different job to editing, and actually they go like that. I think they used to go in a more linear direction, but now they kind of, with technology, it's, there's different skill set.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go the assistant route, lifetime assistant, but I wanted to be more creative. And it's really difficult because you have to take a massive financial hit, because you get used to long jobs with a decent wage, and then people thinking of you as an assistant and never going, oh, you're an editor now, so you actually
Was it
just
by
need...
that taking a step back then and being like,
Yeah.
did you turn
Giving the
down
space.
editing gigs then, assisting gigs?
Yes, I did. I saved up so that I could float for a while.
Yep.
And that's probably one of the most difficult things about it, I think, is just being sensible about that, because you've no idea what's going to happen.
Yep.
And it's really hard to turn down work once you're getting it all the time, and getting good gigs as well,
Yeah.
because it does just snowball. Once you get your first couple, it gets a lot
I
easier.
guess people around you are like, why would you turn down Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, because I was going to go and do season 7, but I just didn't think I could give like a year of my life up to it again.
Yeah.
Because also it's a bit of a sideways maneuver. If you do a lot of series, a lot of, if you get into a show like that, you can just go. You could just be in that for now it's 8th year. You could do it for 8 years as the same role.
And you know the show, so they're like, well,
Yeah.
you're a safe pair of hands. Of course
Well,
they're going to
yeah.
want you to just keep doing that
Yeah,
role.
and they're pretty good actually. They do give opportunities. Like Jesse Parker was assistant on the first 3 series. Then he came back as assemble editor,
Great.
and then he came back as editor. So that's how he. There's definitely progression within that. You have to really, really push for it. And like Charlene said, it's letting people know that you want to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wasn't as sensible. I just went and freaked out for a couple of months, and then went to a lunch and mentioned that I'd been doing some bits of editing in between, but nothing that was going to be
Like
broadcast.
shorts or
Corporate-y stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I got the. I just basically was in Robin's consciousness when they said, we're going to make this pilot, there's no money, who's going to cut this for no money? And obviously you can't get an established editor to do it, so you're going to have to, people that want it will do it.
Yep.
So he was like, well, I know this girl, and because it came from him, they took a punt, and the director and I got on really well. And I did a month, and then they were pleased with the work. And I think it's just about finding those working relationships as
Yeah.
well. So, and then they saw that because the pilot was delivered on the basis of the edit, because the pilot was 24 hours of footage of people talking, because this is a completely ad-libbed, so it's quite hard to cut, because you've got to cut the dialogue,
yeah,
and then you've got to cover the cuts.
turn it
So
into something.
and all you've got is 2,
Yeah.
so it can be a bit cutty, but you're covering up masses of dialogue that you've taken out. It's kind of like a documentary style in that
How do
way.
you decide what goes in?
Yeah, but I really like that kind of like find the jokes, find the story, and then think about the picture afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then because of the basis of the pilot, they went, okay, well, we'll just get you to do the series. But there's 6 episodes, they gave me 1,
Yeah.
because the channel aren't going to trust nobody, So
Hopefully you do the one, and then you then
yeah,
can say to
so
them,
we're
"Look, I've now
hoping
cut-"
if this is successful, so we'll tune in, please, when it's on, then we'll get series 2. And then at that point, then we'll hopefully look at giving me half of the series.
Great.
So that will hopefully be my next gig.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this panel is basically, we're going to keep showing great clips, and then rather than talking about why they're good, I'm going to go, how did you feel at the time of making that? So moving on to Stephen, we're going to show your clip next, if possible. We've got your first one is from Warbook.
Yes.
It's the trailer for
Yes.
Warbook. Do you mind just giving us a little setup of why you've chosen this?
Yeah, so I picked this trailer. So when I was assisting, I was asked by an editor and director the editor I kind of assisted on about 7 films, so kind of stuck with him and rode his coattails quite a long time. But they kind of somebody had cut a trailer for the film, and the director, Tom, didn't think it was quite working. So rather than send it back to them, he just said to me, can we make the changes? So he kind of just handed the trailer over to me, and while they were continuing to cut the film, I was kind of cutting the trailer together. So that's kind of why I picked that clip, and then it kind of leads into my second clip.
Okay, great. Which we'll see later. Can we roll the first clip, please? So in the final tags, were you tempted to put a great trailer cut by Stephen Worsley?
Very tempted.
So how did that come about then? So the trailer came to the cutting room, and the producers were just like, "This is not cutting it." Or?
It was the basically Tom, the director, kind of just felt that it was made for a very kind of low budget, and he felt that what the in-house guys had done wasn't quite what he was hoping from it. So just basically asked if I can. He kind of watched it through, gave me a load of notes, and then it was a collaborative process, which I thought is quite an interesting clip to show for showing that kind of as an assistant when you're given an opportunity like that. After a while of doing sizzle reels and trailers and things like that, you kind of, when somebody says to you, do you want to do one? You go, no, that's the last thing I want to do because I'm doing 101 other things. But I kind of suspected that was a really important thing that I should do, and I think it's a really important kind of note to never say no and turn down one of those opportunities. It's kind of what you guys were saying about, you know, when an opportunity is presented, you just kind of have to take it.
Yep.
And yeah, I recut that, and both the director Tom and the editor Mark kind of gave me notes, and we'd watch it through and then get more notes and kind of refine, and all the sound mix was just in the Avid and things like that as well. And for me, that was one of the key, I think the key moments where Tom, I think Mark had always known because I cut shorts and things, so I'd show him stuff, but I think Tom then just went, okay, he does want to cut, and he can kind of do a semi-good job. And from that kind of led to me getting a couple of episodes of War and Peace.
Wow, amazing.
At least I think that, Tom may completely
So by the
disagree.
time this came about, you were already kind of like, I can do this, I just need the moment. You weren't
Yeah.
sort of felt like you were thrown in the deep end going, how do I...
Yeah, I think cutting shorts and like anything that comes your way, cutting anything gives you more confidence each time you cut something. So I think I was heading towards the point that it was at where you just get to the verge of assisting and think, I kind of feel done with this at the moment, and I'm ready for that next step. And I was on that edge. And it was great that kind of small little moment arrived at that point. So, yeah.
Amazing. Well, we'll keep moving on. So we're going to move down to Adam, if you don't mind. We've got your first clip, which is Loquette.
Loquette, yes. For this clip, my first job in the industry was as the editorial runner on Children of Men, and I've just finished cutting Roma for the same director, for Alfonso Cuarón. So I've got a full circle going on right now in kind of my career for kind of where it's kind of starting and currently is. So how that came about, I had been working on a documentary for a few years, and Alfonso was looking for an editor. My name had made a list, and purely out of recognition from remembering me making tea on Children of Men, he gave me an opportunity. So it pays off, and some people do remember you and believe that you grow up and you're not always in that role, and you're not going to be a runner forever. So I kind of thought this sounds fun. So what he was doing was a web promo for like the spring collection of his partner's jewelry company. So it's quite exciting, and it was 60 seconds long, and I thought that would be nice and easy, single shot. So enjoy.
Roll the clip, please. Some of Alfonso Cuarón's early work.
Yes, I was having anxiety watching that again. that was all done in the Avid, like 26 video tracks, taking about 5 minutes to render it out every time we wanted to watch it. But it worked out. It's not a bad job interview, I guess. And again, you just run with it and just keep going.
So that came about just from you were purely in the edit suite, and he was like, "This has come up. I need this cut." Or?
He was looking for an editor, and well, obviously had that going. So it was hoping it was going to lead into more work. And just being available at the time, someone gave me a call and said, "Are you interested?" I'm like, "Yeah," kind of throw my hat in the ring, and kept going with it. But it's
So you weren't working with him at the time of this.
no,
came
I
about-
hadn't seen him since Children of Men. I hadn't
wow.
seen him probably since I gave him his last cup of tea at the end of the film. So, and it's kind of
That must have been one hell of a cup of tea.
yeah, you've got to go well with that. But it's paid out in kind of more ways than just kind of getting the work for it. So at this point, I'd cut a couple of features. I'd done a very low budget comedy and a documentary, and he was talking about my CV and what I'd done. And he made a comment that I'd never done any VFX assisting work. I was like, well, I have as an assistant editor. I kind of know the process. And he was like, no, but on your CV, you've never been a VFX editor. And I'm like, okay, where are you going with this? It's like, well, if I'm going to go to a studio, I'm going to do a big film, and I want you to kind of come with me, you're going to need that on your CV, because otherwise, how am I going to argue the case? I'm like, oh, okay. And I was still at the stage where every work call I get is assisting. No one was really aware I was editing. I hadn't had much out at that point. So a job came up. Bill Hoy, an editor, came across to work on Pan, and he needed a VFX editor just to help him out for a couple of months. And I got a call. I'm like, yeah, damn right, I'll step back in and do that and earn a bit more money at the same time. As it's kind of been pointed out, when you kind of take that first step up, but you're also financially, you need to kind of be prepared for how it's different. But I kind of feel that I now are very much aware that my CV is kind of way more bolstered out, and I'm aware of it. So the mentoring that he's also kind of brought to me, I've been ridiculously lucky. So yeah, everyone has their own path, and I'm not going to kind of lie that mine hasn't been extremely fortunate. So, but it pays off. You never know what the relationships you have now as an assistant, where someone will remember you down the line in 10 years. So it's just bide your time.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, and you made sure you were prepared when that moment did come up, that you were able to just go, I can do this.
I think I was prepared. I don't know. That was a nightmare. I was just, every time, because he would come in and go, great, I want that to move there, but I don't want anything to touch. And I would like change some keyframes and it would collide with 4 other boxes. And I would just be looking at the TV going, it's like, so, great. He looks at his clock, all right, I'll be back in at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Have you got that? I'm like, yeah. But you make it through. And I think the technicality of that as well, without just being an assistant editor and knowing the Avid pretty kind of well and inside out, I could have just crumbled and gone, no, we've got to bring a VFX person in and do it. And it's just like, no, I accept the challenge. We're going to make this work. And the way that Alfonso works, it's not, we don't send stuff out and get it in VFX. He likes to comp everything. He wants to be in the cutting room, go up to the plasma and go, make that bigger. And he's going like by frames. So I'm kind of just going up by 1. No, smaller, I go down by 1. No, between, like split the difference. You're like, Avid doesn't do points, but I'll just go for 99 again and pretend that works. So, yeah.
Great. John, let's move on to you and your clip.
Oh yeah, I picked a clip from Natural Born Killers, which I was the first assistant editor on with Alex Olivares. The reason I picked this clip is, the thing as an assistant you always want to hear from an editor is, oh, I'm so busy, or I'm buried. Listen, these should be trigger words for you guys, because then you can say things like, oh, is there anything I can help out on? And I worked for Brian Burdan and Hank Corwin ACE on the film, and they said, well, we have this film with Dennis Leary doing kind of his stream of consciousness bit about Mickey and Mallory, the serial killers in the film. We don't think it's going to be in the movie. I've got so much to do because Oliver needs to see the cut that I'm working on. Hank was the same thing. And so they said, well, why don't you give it a shot? And I decided fortune favors the bold. I was a huge fan of Hank Corwin. His cutting on JFK is brilliant. And so I thought, you know what? I'm not going to be safe. I'm going to be insane. And you're about to see it.
Let's see some insanity. Roll the clip, please.
So So of course you can see why they gave it to me, because they were like, this is pointless and doesn't really relate to the film. But the thing is that I cut it and they showed it to Oliver, and Oliver said, oh, wow, this is great. I mean, we're not going to use it in the film, but they liked the work enough. So then as the film went along, Oliver would mention, hey, why don't you give something to Venzen? And so I got to do a tiny bit of cutting on it, and ultimately did a trailer that Oliver sent to the studio, and the studio really liked. And so I think that the key thing is that you want to have a good relationship with your editor, because clearly you start working with someone, you don't want to go, hey, can I have something to cut, please? They're going to be like, whoa, buy me dinner first. But the key thing is that you want to make sure that when opportunities come this way, that you understand that you're going to be doing it as I did, at 3 in the morning after doing all your assisting work. But just understand that, say yes, and then figure out how to get it done later.
So when you handed that over, did you feel like, uh-oh, this might be my way out of here? Or were you like, nah, cool, they're going to love it?
Actually, no. In fact, as a matter of fact, I finished it, and because I'd been up for probably 19 hours straight, I was like, I have no idea if they're going to like it. It like I could feel it. It kind of came together as a piece like that by itself. But honestly, the thing that I gravitated to in it is that Dennis Leary kept making mistakes in the thing and screaming at the camera and hitting the wall. And so I realized that was kind of the one good piece to use from it is. And just in the same way as you were doing your piece, and it's like all improv, you have to kind of find a thread through it. But the key thing is that I tried to have zero expectation for the outcome, because I feel like, and this is probably a better global note as being an assistant trying to cross over into editing, you cannot have expectation, because the timeline to become an editor is not in our hands. It's in the editor we're working for, or the director who calls, who you made tea for, or the universe, or Buddha Gandhi, whoever that person is. And so the less you hold tightly onto your expectations for how my brilliant career is going to go, the less damage you do to yourself. So do the work you can do the best work you can do, and just be open to whatever happens.
Great. Charlene, we're going to move on to your clip now, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Would you mind setting up? This is a clip for this is a trailer for Fortitude.
Yes. So I feel like it's quite a pivotal job for me. It was a big job. I was on it for a long time. I was assisting, and I cut the trailer. Usually, if you do a TV show, you'll cut a trailer. They want a trailer for MIP. It's about halfway through the shoot. It's perfect timing. You're really happy.
Mind
to
just
do
describing what MIP is? Just
Oh yeah, it's like a kind of TV sales that they do over in Cannes, and shows that go in production at the time will make a trailer and then try and show it and sell the show internationally.
Yep.
So
you've got producers on your back going, make our show look good.
Yeah,
we're
exactly,
not getting anyone else to come and cut this, but we need
Yeah.
you to make this look great.
Yeah, and obviously you've got 100 other things to do in the day, and 100 other people to deal with. But and so for me, like, I feel like doing a good job with that trailer, formed relationships with a producer and execs that has kind of got me to where I am now. Like, it wasn't immediate,
Yep.
but again, it was like saying yes, doing a good job, and I don't feel like people saw the trailer and said, oh, she can cut a trailer, therefore she can cut the show. But it was confidence, and it was being in a room, getting notes, sitting with the director or producers or execs, and just kind of building those relationships, I think, helped. Yeah.
Great. Should we have a watch? If we can roll the Fortitude trailer, please. So you cut this trailer whilst assisting on the show, so dealing with
Yes.
dailies and turnovers
Yeah.
and everything
Yeah.
going on, and then you had
Yeah.
to also get this out
Yeah.
the door at the same time.
Yeah, so again, 3 o'clock in the morning, but it's you've got a passion for it as well. You've seen everything that's come in, so you do have an advantage, I think.
Especially on a show like with multiple episodes, you've probably seen more footage than
yeah,
editors
exactly.
have on
Yeah,
individual episodes.
And I was just sort of really keen to so much good footage to work with as well. So I really wanted to work on it and make an impression. And like I say, it didn't necessarily give me the break then and there, but it formed a relationship with a particular producer that has now given me my break. So,
So did you sit down during the process of constructing this trailer? Did that producer sit down and actually work on the edit with you, or did they give you notes? Did that did that train you how to how to run a cutting room?
Yeah, definitely. It gave me the experience, sitting with the producer. The exec producers as well came in to give notes, so you get a feel for that. And also the thing about doing a trailer is that you're not working off a script particularly. So, usually they just say, "Can you do us a trailer?"
Yeah.
And
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. So you're. It's a different. Obviously, it's a different kind of craft, but you are working from your own ideas and you're doing your own structure for it. And I think if you show that and you do a good job, then there's obviously a skills there that you have, and a confidence, I think, as well, that can help then build the relationship. And then something comes up later down the line, and they know you, and you've been in the room with them. And I think for me, it's always trailers. Occasionally, it's been recaps and teasers, but very rarely has it been a scene, particularly, that's kind of built that relationship.
So you were assisting on Fortitude, and then Fortitude, was that your first editing break?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I wouldn't count it as it's like I don't count as a broadcast credit. I didn't sort of do an episode start to finish. So it was just another stepping stone, building block. I went and assisted again, but with the same producer. But he kind of said, "I'll try and get you an episode. I can't guarantee it, but let's just see what happens. And if you want to do it, obviously I want you to do it, and I'll try." And so I took that job because we had that relationship. I didn't particularly want to do that show, but I knew that I had that relationship, so it was a gamble I was willing to take. It didn't pay off, so you just start to pick and choose your work, I think, based on what the outcome is going to be, without trying to have any expectation, because that really is crushing when it doesn't work out, because it so often does. But you do start to, I did start to try and pick work based on the route it was going to take me.
Yep. Yeah. Great. So so you guys, you get your first editing gig, and then it's not like, great, I'm set, I'm sorted now. Everyone's just going to come to me, and then I just keep working full time. You still have to keep maintaining it, keep maintaining those relationships. Eve, I was going to show your second clip, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So you directed a documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why?
Well, so this is one of those jobs that you really learn in hindsight that you really should plan and do your research. Basically, one of my really close friends is a girl that I met on the first big movie I did. So I was a trainee, and then I was on a film called Morning Glory, which is a Harrison Ford film, a comedy. And the assistant to the director was Roger Michelle. She and I are the same age. She's from the States, and she's over here, and we became really good friends. And we'd always said we were going to make a film together. and never did because we both get sidelined. You know, you get into work and then there's just no time. But then in the last 2 years, I've kind of taken a step back, as I said, and opened myself up to other opportunities. And she met this lady when she was also thinking about leaving the film industry. She went and did some volunteer work, met a translator in the States, my friend Katie, who's my co-director, and she's the kind of brain behind this documentary. She met this lady who is a Sudanese refugee and said, there's an amazing story here, and do you want to make a little film? And by that, I was like, I can give you 6 weeks, you know, and then I need to get some money in or whatever. And 6 weeks turned into like 5 months, and then film festivals. And I just thought we were going to make a 15-minute piece to put on Vimeo, but the story's like so big, it's really hard to get the story across in the time we wanted. So and in the end, it became such an editorial job that we just agreed that we would be co-directors because it was told in post. We shot it in 11 days in total, and then it's actually just a half an hour long piece. It's got a bit of an awkward length, but it's been in film festivals this last year. I think we've got into like 15 film festivals all over the world. So this is just the trailer. We don't know what to do with it. There's only 3 of us that made it. So this is the trailer for it, and hopefully someday people will actually see the finished documentary.
Let's roll the trailer now, please. So again, I'm going to keep the panel like basically sort of more industry side rather than the creative side of the doc. So the idea was you were like, I've cut a show now I'm going to go and direct a documentary, or like...
I never have a plan. Let's roll with it. Actually doing this, I actually did this before the comedy. 2 very different jobs. But the editorially quite similar because it's you finding the dialogue, you finding the story, the structure within the edit, so that it forms the piece. So you're not working to a script. Yep. And I actually really like that because it gives you. It's just so creative.
I imagine you're dealing with the hours and hours and hours of footage that are coming in.
Yeah.
And prepping it like you would prep.
Yeah, totally. For hang-ups, for that scene you saw, I think, well, Anil will know, but it's probably like, I don't know, an hour of that just for that one scene, and they've got to be no more than 2-3 minutes. So, and then, doing this was great practice for doing the comedy, because it's just understanding how to get your point across in the most succinct way as possible. Yep. And then how to cover up your trail of cuts, covering it with pictures. So yeah, it's good practice, and good to just be in the edit seat and doing that, you know.
And the idea is then that you'll use this as another string to your bow of just like, this is what I can also do, and this is how I can also be. I could come onto your production, or is it just I was interested in making this?
Probably the latter. I want to do projects that I feel passionate about. Yep. I feel passionate about her story and the refugee story in itself. I can use it as a string to my bow. I guess so. It's hard to use things that are not that don't carry a weight in terms of the industry. Yep. So, everyone talks about HBO Game of Thrones as, for me, like being the big editorial achievement, but that was actually like I'm a small cog in a massive wheel on that, but it carries the weight of the name. But the work I'm most proud of is probably stuff that people never heard of, because you have a bigger role on something that's a lot smaller, and therefore you really get to use your skills. So. So I will obviously try and use it. I try to get people to see it. I want people to see it, but and also just trying to try out something that's not just editing is quite good. But I actually realised on this that no, I'm definitely not a director, man.
Time is racing away from us. I'm going to move straight on to Stephen. Your second clip is from War and Peace, which I'm right in saying you were assisting on initially, and then you cut an entire episode?
So I feel really bad because we've gone from something really heavy to
Sorry.
posh people dancing.
Program this perfectly.
Yeah, so before, when they were kind of in pre-production for War and Peace, Tom, who did Warbook and a couple of films that I assisted on, and Mark, the editor who works with Tom, had a discussion, unbeknownst to me, about bringing me on as an editor, because there were 6 episodes and Mark couldn't do all 6, and it was BBC and the Weinstein Company had said, well, we'll just get somebody else in right at the end to come and inherit these episodes. And Tom was kind of adamant that he didn't really want that, because he didn't think that was the best for the show. So they always wanted somebody who knew the show to kind of carry it on and help it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they had a discussion with the BBC about whether they'd be up for me doing it. And they said yes. And then, yeah, purely off the back of that, the idea was I start as the assistant and then slowly kind of migrate over to cutting the episodes, the kind of middle 2 episodes. But very quickly, Mark kind of had a lot of footage coming in for battles and things. So it ended up being I would do all the assisting work first thing in the morning, get all the rushes out of the way, and then straight away kind of start cutting the scenes that I knew were the episodes that were planned for me. And there was a lot of sitting in front of the other thinking, don't cock this up, because this is it, this is your make or break. And then once you kind of get over that, it's, okay, I've just got to do it and get on with it. So yeah, there was two scenes that I'm really kind of proud of, and one is a dual scene that kind of opens episode 3, and then one is this one, which is a ballroom kind of dance sequence that they shot a lot of material for, and I realised there's only so much material you can watch spinning round on a top camera without feeling quite sick. So yeah, it's a sequence I really love doing, but equally was scared as hell when cutting it and doing it at the same time.
Cool. Let's see what drove Stephen to Terra. Roll clip, please. So, being brought onto the show initially as an assistant, when you then went into cutting your show, did you feel like you really had to prove yourself to say, I'm no longer the assistant, or did you just kind of go, door sign says editor, and put your feet up?
I think you've always feel as though you have to prove yourself. I think even every day now, I feel like somebody's going to catch me out as a fraud and send me on my way. Every day, I think you're constantly trying to, and not just prove to other people, but prove to yourself that this is kind of where I belong and that I can. It's that thing of knowing that you can do it and being comfortable, but equally not stopping to push yourself to be better. But the funny thing about War and Peace was afterwards, after we'd kind of finished the show, I kind of had something you said earlier, I kind of had the arrogance of thinking, like, yeah, I've cut War and Peace, that's it, I'm set, I'm done, it's going to go amazing. And somebody said to me, you need to get an agent. So I got in touch with all the agents and went for various meetings, and they all said, so what have you done? And I went, 2 episodes of War and Peace, and they were like, great, what else? And I was like, 2 episodes of War and Peace. They said, and I went, some shorts, and they went, right, park those. And what else? And I was like, that's it. And nearly every agent was like, come back when you get more. And it's that kind of, never thinking you've kind of got there, and always realizing that it's always a battle to get the next job, and to kind of.
Was it relationships you'd already previously built then that you were like, hey, I just cut this show, and how did you go from?
Funnily enough, one of the agents just took a huge punt on me, and then equally a director after that. His editor that he normally works with was unavailable on a TV series, and he kind of was like, after the shoot, I'm away for 2 weeks, so not many people want to take this job, so do you want to do it? So I was like, yeah, it's fine. But relationships are kind of integral, I think. But it is also the challenge of when you've been an assistant, to get people to see you in a very different light. And I think that's
Yeah.
that's the thing that was kind of talked about earlier, of always pushing and saying, I am cutting stuff and I do want to cut. And it's reminding people that that is what you're doing and that's what you want to do and that's kind of where you want to be at.
Yep.
So they always know that in their head.
Great. John, we're going to move on to your next clip.
Oh, wonderful. How are we doing on time?
We're good. We can
Okay.
go crazy and we can run into lunch a little bit if you guys are.
I'm
Find out.
I'm going to explain why I picked this clip after we see it, but you do need to know. This is from the movie Storks, and it's a scene that our main characters have had their baby kidnapped, and so like any worried parent, they've disguised themselves in a walk-around character costume and are going to confront the people who have taken their baby from them.
Cool. Let's see the clip.
So they get the baby back, and the reason I showed that twofold. One, I want everyone to see this movie. It's such a weird little animated movie, but I have such affection for it. But the real reason I picked it is to send the message that the thing that's more important than if you're an assistant, or even more important than if you're an editor, is the caliber and quality of people that you work with. I did that film with an associate editor by the name of Chris Cartagena. He did the first pass and storyboards, which really was very funny and was already getting laughs. And Chris, just in the same way, you need to understand as an assistant, anybody who is a high caliber person is never going to be in that position for long. And I knew that I only was able to work with Chris for a certain amount of time because he's really talented. And so he ended up leaving the show early, and now he's cutting The Grinch for Illumination, and he's going to have a brilliant career. But the main thing is not to get hung up on, oh, I'm so unhappy because I'm only an assistant. You should take a look around and see the caliber of people you're working with. I was working on Fight Club. I got to cut the South Park movie. Because of that, I ended up getting an interview at DreamWorks. Thank God I got the second job at DreamWorks. I was one of the editors on Chicken Run. I came to Bristol and worked on a project there. And I thought, okay, this is so great. I finally arrived. I'm going to buy a very expensive house in California. And I immediately got laid off. It completely caught me short. And I was unemployed for 7 months. And having to make a mortgage and having to support kids, it's terrifying. And so what ended up happening is even though I had, which are certainly wonderful credits, I realized that I had to go back to assisting. And thank God David Fincher was making Panic Room, and Jim Haygood said, hey, I know you've been editing, but would you like to come work with us again? And I said, yes. Not initially, I think it was kind of my tail between my legs thinking, oh, I was an editor and I blew it. But the thing is the day one, I got back into the cutting room with all these people that I'd worked on Fight Club and Panic Room and the game with, and immediately I realized, oh, this is great. I'm doing work that I find meaningful with a group of people that I really admire. And so my single biggest piece of advice for you guys is do not rip yourself up if you have to go back to assisting, because it happens to the best of us. And in fact, I think it's more likely that you will go back to assisting even for a short amount of time. And you need to understand that is, you're on the continuum. You need to kind of go out to the 20,000-foot view of your career and understand that, you might be assisting right now, but it might be for a short amount of time, or you never know. Because of that job you're an assistant on, you might get bumped up. You never know. Don't have expectations for your career because it will destroy you.
We are going to zip straight to our last clip, which is Adam's. I want to pick your brain so much on that, but we're just going to move straight on to Adam. So we're going to show you your clip, which is
if we have time. If we don't have time, we can jump
Do
on.
we have time? Yeah. We've got time.
All right. Great. One thing I did want to say, actually, is as an assistant, I never cut any scenes on films I worked on. I think there was one on Harry Potter. I had a little bit of downtime and experimented with footage. But I did find myself too busy most of the time. But what I did do in my weekends and between projects is just go into shorts. So if you don't get the time to kind of be involved with the projects you're assisting on, just find something else. It's not necessarily a negative for that. It's nice to have beautiful footage, but I think you might actually learn more cutting with crap. And I really should show one of the terrible shorts that I did then, but I'm not. Just to show you how it is. So just to give a bit of an introduction for it, it's a feature I did a couple years ago. It's a scene right in the middle of the movie. Inspector Shoerope is investigating a murder at a Halloween party, and he is, yeah. Roll
Let's
that.
roll it. Let's go.
So with that one, what you'd probably find when you do get an editing opportunity, you're not going to have an assistant. So all of that time you spent assisting is going to pay off, because then you don't have to worry about the turnovers. You're going to know it's second nature.
So true.
You can just get down, focus on the editing, spending time with the director and working on the story. And you just, you would be in a way, you're not even thinking about the timeline, but you've set it up perfectly for turning over and doing your guide tracks. So it all pays off. So you're going to need all those assistant skills even as an editor, because it may take you a little while to get an assistant anyway, and then it just gives you more time to focus on the cutting.
Great. Well, I think soon we're going to be forcibly ejected. So, yeah, that's been, like, for me, that's been incredible, just like being able to pick up your brains. I hope you guys have felt the same. If we can just give it up for our panel, please.